Welcome, everyone. So today we're celebrating the 20th anniversary of the Financial Inclusion Forum, and this is our agenda. Oops. There we go. So first, I'll give you a welcome for about 10 minutes, and then we'll have our panel, which is about purpose and financial inclusion. And then we're going to have a break, and there'll be an interactive activity that you'll be doing. And then after that, we're going to have another panel about the future of financial inclusion. So welcome, everyone. And then about how to join the Financial Inclusion Forum. And some of you are already members and former directors even, so it's really great to see everyone here. So, have you ever wondered why you're here? Have you ever wondered what your life is for? Have you ever wondered if you're going to leave a legacy? Well, come with me. It's June 2001, and I'm in the London borough of Newham, and I'm in a big office building, and my manager has called me for a meeting, a bit unusual, and I can see him coming. He's about 6'6" and of Nigerian origin, and really such a jolly guy. With his dreadlocks and so on. But I see him coming, and he's not looking too happy. He asked me to step into his office, which is a bit unusual. Phyllis, he looks down at me through his dreadlocks. You've done a really good job with this computer program for women that you put, well, others as well in the community that you put in the primary school. It's really made a huge difference. However, I've got some bad news. We were hoping to have this for 3 years, but they've pulled the plug on us on the funding. MECOR, what do you mean? We worked so hard to get this set up. They guaranteed us funding, and now, you mean it's over? Have you ever felt like you've had the rug pulled out from under you? So I didn't know where to go. So I started looking for other contracts. And not too much avail. But now it's December 2001. And I'm at a conference with my partner, John, in the south of France. And it's a big conference room, people from all over the world. And there's a buzz of excitement in the room because someone special is coming. And of course, there's a lot of French people there as well. Really exciting. And in walks a man, fairly small, brown face, and he's wearing a white long tunic with a stand-up collar, white trousers, a bit unusual for December. And he steps up to the podium. I'm Professor Yunus from Bangladesh and Grameen Bank. And he starts speaking with such conviction and such commitment. I'm really listening. And then I hear him say something special. Women deserve to be seen and heard. And a way of doing that is with microfinance. And I get goosebumps. And I go back to the time when I was a U.S. Peace Corps volunteer in Guatemala from 1965 to 1967. And I founded the first women's weaving group in the country. We took the designs of the women that you can see in this blouse, and we made products. Smaller products, because this takes 3 to 4 months to weave. The women and I together worked, and we learned marketing, we learned sales, product development. And not only did they benefit themselves, but they called women from the outlying areas as well, and included them, got bank accounts, and I realized that I wanted to go back to my calling again and work in microfinance. Well, it wasn't easy. At first, like my partner John said, you don't really have the skills to work in this area. And bankers said, what do you know about finance? And my sister said, well, why don't you just stick to what you've been doing with education and technology and working in London? Well, then I got a break, and I started working with Planet Finance and developing training courses in China and India, and a course in Ghana as well, developing a curriculum. And then along came 2005, the UN Year of Microcredit. And so I got invited to be the coordinator for the UK team. And we brought together parliamentarians, media, corporates, NGOs, and a lot of community members as well. All wanted to see how they could boost microfinance in the UK and globally. It wasn't easy all the time to get people working together because there was distrust, but throughout that year, we really succeeded. And in fact, we won awards from the United Nations and also the World Bank. We were one of 13 countries out of 125 that took part that were awarded excellence. And then out of that, we founded the Microfinance Club, and we kept on having events. And I developed training courses for professionals who came to me and said, we want to know how to use our skills to make a difference. And we also developed microfinance training in many countries, in China, in India, as well as in the slums of Kenya, training people in the slums to be trainers of other enterprise people who were using microfinance. And then later, I developed a program at the University of Nottingham called the Social Impact Game, so that students could work together with corporates, with NGOs, and other community groups to learn how to do social impact projects. And we won awards for that. And today, I have a tech company called Innoviva Tech, and we are developing a platform assisted with AI called Opportunity Matcher to match SMEs with funding opportunities. Again, another form of financial inclusion. So that's why I love nothing more than working with professionals and with organizations to know and to learn how they can make a difference with their work, which is what we have been doing with the Financial Inclusion Forum and what we're doing now with this Opportunity Matcher platform. So at the beginning, I asked you a question: what is your life for? And I believe that by living your purpose, each of us can make a difference through improving the lives of other people in a measurable way. And I'd like to now invite our panel to come up and to say how they have been taking part in making a difference in the world through financial inclusion. Yeah. Okay, so we have to sit.
Name, guys.
Yeah. All right. So Sadhu comes first, and then to when it's your turn to click on the green button, and also to hold this and pass it. So I'd first like to introduce Sadhu, who is well known to many of you here. He's a former treasurer of the Financial Inclusion Forum, and Sadhu started his career as a chartered accountant, then worked with refugees in the UK to develop their businesses. And then with the Aga Khan Foundation, he has developed microfinance in 10 countries. So we hand over to you, Sadhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Phyllis. Okay, I think Phyllis was a very good summary of what you have achieved and continue to achieve. Well done. I think that you asked, my first question is my purpose.
Yes.
And you spelled out part of it. But for me, it started when I was in secondary school and happened to read the memoirs of the Aga Khan III, where, of course, right at the outset it says, life is a great and noble calling, not a mean and groveling thing to be shuffled through as best as we can, but a lofty and exalted destiny. And that, of course, set my purpose. So then, of course, comes the question, what do I do? Or what will happen? And I think I was at that time then, of course, came to UK to study chartered accountancy, qualified as a chartered accountant, and fortunately dived straight into professional practice. And of course, thereafter, the Aga Khan Development Network, by the way, you can look up the website akdn.org, started a business counseling service in the UK. for the community, because we had at that time an influx of forcefully displaced refugees coming from Uganda and neighboring countries into UK. And I think the instruction was that they should not become a burden to the society, and we should do something for them so that they can maintain their dignity and continue, really speaking, to earn income. So I was recruited as the first CEO, and I was asked to say, what will I do in order that they avoid pitfalls of going into business, number one. Number two, what do we do so that they can become bankable? Now, remember, they had hardly any capital, most of them. And we established a partial loan guarantee program with Lloyds Bank at that time. And of course, straight away, I was receiving an influx of people coming for, because it's a free business advice, by the way, seeking advice on businesses, and variety of businesses all over UK. And they were also seeking, really speaking, way to finance their business with limited capital.
And you were really successful with that.
That's right.
And then, but you told me that then the Aga Khan Foundation said, there's a real need overseas, and they sent you to East Tajikistan. Yeah.
Yes, you're quite right. I mean, we enabled about 3,000 families to consult and about 2,000 to go into business in the UK. And of course, and half of them seeking finance, the other one seeking purely advice. But then, of course, His Highness, the Aga Khan, who is the chairman of the Aga Khan Development Network, said that why are we spending resources in the Western world? Why not the developing world, right? And the name is very appropriate. SOAS stands for
The School of Oriental and African Studies.
So I was immediately sent to the Oriental countries, Central Asia, to Tajikistan. Now, Tajikistan at that time, remember, was an ex-Soviet country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 15 countries was, really speaking, thrown aside, or not thrown aside, but really had to find their own way to progress in life. And I was sent, really speaking, to Tajikistan, eastern Tajikistan. Is there a slide here? Now, it is really speaking, eastern Tajikistan is nearly half of Tajikistan. It's mountainous. People live there in 600 different villages at a height of between 5,000 to 12,000 feet above sea level. And I think that part was, now because of civil war, there was immediately civil war. So that region was purely on humanitarian assistance. And I had to get there. It's a long journey. I had to go to Moscow, to Uzbekistan, to Kyrgyzstan, and find my way over to Korog, the capital of eastern Tajikistan. And of course, when I went there, and there was no transport, by the way, the only thing was the NGO transport. And I had gone through 6 mountain passes to reach Korog. And then, of course, I went to all the 7 districts, and I found, really speaking, there was nothing existing there. Nothing existing at all. And
I think you told me there was this one woman selling something.
That's right.
One woman in all the country.
So my first employee, a young boy of 17 who spoke broken English, I said, what's that? No business at all. He said, no, come to the hallway, unlit hallway. There was a lady selling some items. The whole inventory, I could buy it for $50. And I said, how do you buy this? Yes. And she was making a round trip of 2,500 kilometers to come back, buy, come back, and then sell it at a lower price.
Yes. And so Sadru, can you tell us then how you managed to get from that situation to actually, you developed the microfinance program, and you even got it to the level of having a microfinance bank.
Yeah, I think.
And what were some of the lessons that you learned from that?
So yes, I mean, anybody who wants to start microfinance, and then you go to a country where there's nothing existing, no entrepreneurship, spirit within them, and you say to yourself, what does the rule book of microfinance says? Here there was inflation of about 300% per annum. The currency was depreciating at the rate of 20% per month. And he said, is that the environment where you want to start business? Some big investor had come to the region and said, this region is too fragile. Earthquakes, mudslides, avalanche, you name it, and everything was there. So what do I do? So I had to immediately dive into a situation of saying, this is not going to be UK now. Business advice and, finding finance But here, people don't have money. People have got no entrepreneurship. So what do we do? So immediately, I said I will recruit local people, about 6, loan officers, and train them. Our mission is to provide business advice and to be mentors, continue to be mentors, and of course give startup loans. Now you don't give microfinance credit to startup situations. You usually speaking lend money to economically active people. And here we were starting with speaking from scratch. And fortunately, and they asked me, repeated me on the phone to please explain one thing. My very first loan, which we gave in American dollars, by the way, was to several people who came there on the first day. And by the way, I'm making more like a co-pilot to the manager, not to be the manager. And this person said, I want to borrow $1,000 so I could repair all these broken cars which are around, and they could restart, something could restart. So I talked to my colleagues and we said, okay, fine, we'll give him $1,000. Now, thereafter I was busy meeting the governor, meeting so many other people, the other NGOs, and came back in the evening. He was still there sitting in the office with tears in his eyes. So I said, what's happened? He said he can't believe it that we lent money to a person, no security, nothing at all, no track record of ever being in business. And I said, it's okay. You go ahead and do what you propose to do. And thereafter we lent more and more money. Right? Within 2 years, in that particular region, we set up so many thousands of businesses, right? 70% of them startups. Others came for repeat loans, and in 2 years, we were sustainable.
So, Sandru, could you give us, because I know you then developed that all the way to a microfinance bank. So could you give us how you are actually able to live your purpose through this?
That's right.
Because,
That's right.
Yes.
So I think that seeing abject poverty in Central Asia, right, and now, really speaking, catalyzing the economy, I mean, that tells you something. I insisted my loan officers right at the beginning, please be exposed to poverty. Don't just lend. Go and see them, see how they live, what's happening, and only then get the feel of what is poverty. So that, of course, would touch your heart, anybody's heart, quite frankly. Wherever I went, they wanted to greet me, they wanted to, give their humanitarian food to me, and I said, no, don't do that, please. Please manage your lives, make sure you improve it's not just poverty alleviation, it's all a question about improving your quality of life. There are a number of things involved. So immediately, of course, we made sure that we link up with other NGOs and with other academic institutions, because we had other institutions helping with healthcare, helping with education, repairing bridges and so on. And we said, look, we better link, so there should be something happening as a multi-dimensional approach.
Yes.
And in so doing, really speaking, it's setting the platform to go to the next stage. Immediately thereafter, we went to some more, apart from going to Badakhshan or eastern Tajikistan, I was asked to go to Rasht Valley, which is another province, Shurabad and so on. And then, of course, by that time, the Aga Khan Development Network with the United Nations was already achieving a peace accord with the central government. So
Sandru, you said at the beginning that you were inspired as a teenager by the Aga Khan. And so how has this work in microfinance, not only in East Tajikistan, but other countries, how has that enabled you to live your purpose?
Yes, so I think the continuing, His Highness was very specific that whatever we establish has got to be for the whole country, inclusive. It must be for poverty alleviation and improving the quality of life. Okay? And in so doing, of course, we established that there was no microfinance law in Tajikistan. We became a microcredit program, and then we became a microfinance program, and then we, of course, rolled it over into the very first bank which we established, called the first microfinance bank, Tajikistan. And similarly, exposure, if I may call it, allowed me to, really speaking, I was asked to go to neighboring countries, Afghanistan, Kyrgyzstan, Syria, and so on and so forth. about 10, 11 countries. And of course, I was asked that why don't you go and really speaking now create the same program? There's always a question of knowing the tradition, knowing the culture, modifying your approach, and really speaking, rolling out the program. So really speaking, the purpose was not just mine, the purpose of overall, right, to make sure that we improve the quality of life wherever we go.
That is just so incredible, Sadhguru, that you actually have worked and developed microfinance in 10 countries, and starting with a place that did not even have, had one person selling something. So thank you so much for your contribution, Sadhguru.
So finally, I think your name FIF, I hope becomes like FIFA, it's your
Fifth Financial Inclusion Forum. Yes.
All over the world. Okay.
Yes. And and this is the real value of the Financial Inclusion Forum, and this is what so many people have told us who've come to our events and our networking, have said that they're actually able to learn from people such as Sadhguru, who bring back these stories of what it is actually like to build microfinance and to make it a sustainable endeavor.
I recommend everybody to be really speaking, joining exchanges like FIF or FIF and other exchanges too. Yeah, there are so many platforms, CGAPs,
That's right.
Acadian and so on, and that will of course increase your knowledge and then go forwards.
Yes, thank you so much. So now our next panelist is Sam Hunt, and Sam is like Sadhguru. Sadhguru was a treasurer of Financial Inclusion Forum, and Sam is currently a treasurer. But
sorry, another accountant straight up.
There are all kinds of accountants, and we need you. Yes,
well, to be here.
So Sam is a finance director at Lockbox, and Sam, could you tell us about your purpose?
Yes, I can do. Yeah, thanks, Phyllis.
So if you just hold that.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Sadhguru. That's really inspiring, and actually, is like just mentioned there, Phyllis, about the reason I started coming to the FIF probably 7 or 8 years ago was because of just the sort of inspiring stories that you'd hear in the panels, but also afterwards as well. I started coming firstly because I fell into a financial services job at Grant Thornton, was a financial services audit role, which was not very sexy, and it was working with all kinds of financial services companies, lots of asset managers, lots of insurers. And I was not getting much inspiration from it. I can see a lot of them. I couldn't really see clearly what their mission was, what benefit they were having to society, where the innovation was. So after a few years, once I qualified, I stuck in this job thinking, right, how do I get inspired from it? So I started to go along to all kinds of events in London. So the Financial Inclusion Forum was one. I go into Brick Lane and go to some of these cryptocurrency meetups to hear about Bitcoin. But the thing that always kept me coming back to the Financial Inclusion Forum was such a great variety of events, all these different topics, but with the same lens. The people, like Sadhguru, just inspiring people living who have lived amazing lives all the time. That was what you're getting, on tap all the time. Every conversation was inspiring. Every conversation you'd have afterwards was, would get you up in the morning the next day to think about what am I going to do next. Yeah, and I think a couple of years down the line from that, I moved my client base away from the humdrum, generic financial services to fintechs and financial inclusion companies and impact investors. And I had a client base and a group of clients that I was kind of proud to work with. And then I got put in contact with the founders of the company I still work for 6 or 7 years down the line, who were a fintech working in financial inclusion. So they ticked 2 boxes: innovation and a bit of a mission as well. And it's taken me the next sort of 6, 7 years that I've been there, which has been, it's been great. Just because, and I think the thing that I picked out because Phyllis thank you for taking half an hour of your time to tease out some of the reasons why I went places with my career. But I think one of the reasons why I kept coming back to the fifth, rather than necessarily some of the other talks I was going to, was that it felt like there was, and it's maybe a bit of a buzzword, but the community aspect that microfinance and financial inclusion kind of uses and leverages is a thing that excited me. You know, that community element really talked to my heart. And whether that, you know, when I'm moving to a startup where there was four people, having the opportunity to build a community even in a company was something that I was driven by. So I think I found that sort of community aspect of the fifth, and that's what drove me forward the next couple of years. So yeah.
And how do you feel you're able to live your purpose? Because you said your purpose is actually to build community, culture, and values.
Yeah, well, I guess in that way, right? I think building, you know, at Lockbox, I built out 2 teams at the company. So built out the finance team and the data team from scratch, which is, you know, I think one of the proudest. You know, it's not always a given that when you start a tech startup that the culture is holding together when you get to sort of 130 people. So I'm glad, you know, very proud that I've been able to contribute to building that culture, and I think that is one of the, you know, it's again looking at my purpose. If you put it in that way, building community has been one thing. I think obviously the type of industry I work in is helpful. I think, like a few people know, it's a running joke, I'm trying to quit my job. I've been trying to do that for 12 months, still failing. But you know, I'm planning to take a career break at some point, and when I come back to my next opportunity or my next activity that I work on productively, I think, yeah, it's gonna have to be something that's, you know, up there with the lives that Sadru's lived, and, you know, you've lived, and you know, these stories that I can use to inspire me, and, you know, hopefully inspires everyone to carry on working in this industry.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's really wonderful to see this, you know, really valuable side of the financial industry. When we're talking about the future of financial industry or financial inclusion, there'll be some really good points that all of you have also come up with in our conversations. So thank you so much, Sam. And now one of the co-chairs of the Financial Inclusion Forum is Ursa, if I can say your name properly, and originally from Sweden, but she has a very interesting background about how she got involved in financial inclusion. But first start off, tell us your purpose and then how you got inspired to get into financial inclusion.
Yes, and to explain my purpose, I think it's important to give a bit of a background. So my first training and job was a nurse in acute neurosurgery. So I've always wanted to work with people, for people, and I want to help people or improve things. It's not always that you can help, but you can make the most out of the situation, even if it's difficult. So I did that for some time, 5 years to be exact, but I always want to do more. And I love the nursing, but as a nurse, it's really difficult because you're limited in how many patients you can see in a day. And I wanted to do more. I wanted to work with systemic change, not just one-to-one, which is, I still love it, and it's so important, all of the nursing work. So I went back to study international relations and economics. And it was a little bit of a coincidence. I actually ended up in finance for a listed telecom operator. I like numbers, but as I said, I want to work with something that is impactful. And so I said to the management that I like the company, but I want to work with something more meaningful, like sustainability. And it turned out that there was a big need for us to work more structured with sustainability. So that was my first sustainability role, heading up sustainability for a telecom operator in many countries around the world. So I ended up doing that and then moved to a sister company, also telecom, and I was working a lot in Africa and Latin America in really frontier markets. And as you can hear, it's very important for me to do a change. And I realized, because I was on the ground, like you said, Sadre, to see when you work with sustainability, my view at least, is that you really need to collaborate with so many different stakeholders. It's not something that I can do via email, and especially not when you're working in really, really complex markets. So I was traveling out to see what we could do. And so we started setting up programs through our telecom services to do mobile birth registration. It started off really small, but it had a huge impact for the individual, for the children. And there was a lot of things that when I came from Sweden and also living in the UK, took for granted that we don't think about, that we get a birth certificate or national insurance number that enables us to get healthcare and education, open a bank account and all of this. So it was a really, really impactful program, but it was small. And so this is now connecting to my purpose. I constantly get frustrated because I want to do more, because I can see the need. I can't accept that things are unfair. I think it should be equal opportunities and everyone should have access to healthcare, to clean water, to energy that we're talking about a lot these days. So that is what I would say that is connected to my purpose. So I'm very much a champion for fair, inclusive and impactful solutions, I would say.
Yes, and I think it's just, as you just said, that it's so, and it's also what Sadhu said, is to see what it's really like for people living in poverty, and to realize the things that we take so much for granted that people don't have access to. And I can really get your energy and your drive and your purpose that you want to do something about this. Yes, and so that's why you're now working in so many different fronts to get stakeholders working together to come up with these impactful solutions. So.
Absolutely, and that's how I met some of the board members, previous board members here in the audience and Financial Inclusion Forum. I think it's such an important forum because we facilitate very, very important engagement. As I said, I don't think anyone, no company, no government, no NGO can solve this on their own. So we really, really need to work together. So a few years ago, I think 4 years ago to be exact, I joined FIF on the board. And then I'm looking at Rishi now, the other co-chair. Was it a year and a half ago? Rishi and I became the co-chairs. So yeah, I feel like we can do a lot. I mean, it's amazing what has been set up, but I think we can do a lot more because there is so much that needs to be done. And also the more I learn, I'm going to look at you, Sam, you're going to speak later on. The more we learn about financial inclusion, it's still so much about exclusion, and it shouldn't be like that. So I'm very much for we should never rest or settle, because it constantly need to improve. And I think that we are in a very good space.
Yes. And this is the important thing. So many people have told us that when they come to our Financial Inclusion Forum events, they learn about the practicalities of what it is to make financial inclusion happen. And they also have a chance to network and find out from other people in the field. So many people have told us, yes, I've been doing a master's or other programs, but this is one of the few places where I can actually learn the practical side. So thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you.
And now Will Durbin, who is also one of our directors, and he is the head of program and partnerships for digital innovation and transformation at Opportunity International. And since 2016, he's also the founder and chair of Financial Inclusion Forum Africa. So we hand over to you, Will, about your purpose.
Thank you very much. I think for me, the purpose, I'll say, started off when I was a child. You know, back at home, especially with my mom, there was always some kind of charitable activity going on in the house. Always, maybe mainly through the church, but helping poor people coming home. We set up the first credit union, I remember, our living room for the church. So I think growing up, it was never in doubt in my mind that whatever I do, whatever I achieve, you have to give something back. You have to help others, you know. And I come from Ghana. At the time I went to the university, there were only 3 main universities in Ghana at the time, so this was early 90s. And for me, it meant that for those of us who were fortunate enough to have a good education, we had to learn, understand the world better to make it better for those who didn't have the opportunity. So for me, the purpose was always very clear in my mind that whatever I do, whatever I learned, I had to make life better for others. And sort of in terms of financial inclusion, I did sort of come to the UK to study, and still continuing, did a lot of work around economic development. So that was really my trust, was around, economic development. How can you improve the lives of people? And then I started looking at small businesses. And I remember my supervisor then gave me Mohammed Yunus's book, which I read and which really touched me in the way they did stuff. But then I started working in the UK. I worked for a small charity. Well, it was an NGO. These were what we call financial community development finance institutions. So these were your, if you like, your microfinance institutions here in the UK or in the West. And as I worked with them, and I went into, because their purpose was mainly to work in deprived communities, in the inner cities. So, young man from Africa, I went to some of these very deprived communities in Birmingham, and I was really shocked at the level of poverty that I saw. Nothing like what you would see in Africa. Different, But the difference for me was the hopelessness that you saw in people. You go to, in the developing countries, Africa, you would go to the farm and you see people tilling this hard soil, and they keep on tilling it hard, and you can see the smile on their faces. They are not hopeless. They are still working, and they are hoping that something, and when you are trying to support such a person, and I'm sure you'd seen the place that you went, you feel like you want to continue supporting because the person hasn't given up. But here you saw that hopelessness, and sometimes people just give up, And those were the areas that made me start to think about social exclusion, financial inclusion here in the UK. So actually, I went off and did my doctorate in financial inclusion in the UK.
And Malcolm Harper.
Yeah, Malcolm Harper,
who's one of our former chair, was your PhD supervisor,
exactly,
wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, it's we're a bit like a big family here.
So that was actually an interesting way of looking at financial inclusion, not from developing countries, but also what's happening in developed countries. But then before I finished, I got a job at Barclays, because back in the day, this was early Tony Blair time, the banks were closing down branches, as they are doing now. But they were closing large numbers of branches in deprived communities. So this whole idea of social exclusion, financial exclusion suddenly just went through the roof. And so the banks were all setting up teams of financial inclusion, social finance teams to come together to see how the banks can respond to this kind of work. And so then I was very lucky because I just studied. Many people didn't even know what financial inclusion actually meant. It was a very new term. So I managed to join this team of, we're about 4. And Barclays is a huge organization, and there were only 4 of us looking at this issue. And we're looking at issues in the UK. So we're working with community development finance institutions, credit unions, and many such organizations. But come 2005, met Phyllis, and we were talking about the year of microcredit. And for me, that was a pivotal year because for the first time, that whole issue really came up. And much as I understood what was going on in Africa, I had never quite looked at it before as an issue. It never really occurred. And when we went for events, it suddenly hit me that, in Africa, we had 30% at the time estimated of the people were banked, 30%. Here in the UK, it was about 97% banked, so the 3%. And because of that 3%, I had a job here. And we were doing everything possible with the Bank of England, everything to cater for 3% of the population.
Yes.
Whereas in a continent where 70% of the population did not have access, there was nothing going on. So I remember I wrote to the CEO and said, Barclays was big in Africa at the time. We had all our branches there. What are we doing in Africa? We are doing a lot here in the UK for 3%. What about our markets? So he said, okay, fine, through the team that I work, go off somewhere in Africa. They gave me £150,000. go somewhere in Africa and do something. That was literally my remit. Somewhere in Africa and do something. I picked up my bag, my check, and then went off to Ghana. But I think for me, then Mohammed Yunus's book really hit me, because what he had done was he had looked at the indigenous system there, what the women were doing. He didn't impose anything to them. He looked at what was doing, what was working, and then improved it and set up this whole thing. So I said, well, I'm not going to go back and then go and force the bank in Ghana to do anything. I'll go straight to the market, talk to people, try and understand what's happening.
You went to the grassroots.
And try and understand.
It's a really important principle.
Yeah. So really looking at these indigenous systems of finance and see how we can improve them. And yeah, we found the Susu Collectors was an indigenous savings collection system. We partnered with the bank so that the bank could support them and give them loans. So in all, I still had my 150,000 because I didn't have to give it to anybody. So we gave some money away. We used the money as a guarantee for the loans that the bank would give to the Susu Collectors rather than giving them a grant.
Yeah. Just to explain, the Susu that you worked with is indigenous system that works in a marketplace that is a traditional way of people to save money. Because this is one of the important things about microfinance. What most people want is a safe place to save their money. And so you capitalized on that indigenous system.
Yeah, exactly. So, and for me, the key thing is not just to use grant money. There is a role for philanthropic money to develop these things, but we've got to look at sustainability, and you've got to get to see how banks, can see that as a market. And that had always been my big thing, that, you are in a market where you are banking 10% or even less of the population, but you are big because you are banking this small, and all the rest of the people, you are not even touching them. So my question to my fellow bankers was, what are you doing? Why are you not? It's a big market out there. If you found a way to lend to that 70%, you would make some money. Even if you didn't really care about them, you just cared about money. This is an opportunity for you. And I must say, it did take quite a long time to get that message across. For a long time, I was just a lone voice saying this, and many people just didn't understand what I was saying because they didn't see that market, or the unbanked market as a market for them. Some of them would say, well, yes, we want to provide. Why should we provide banking services to them? I understand they don't have it, but my product is not for them. And I remember one person said, it's like for a car. You cannot, if we are Ferrari, you cannot say that we should provide a Ferrari for everybody. If you want a car, you can buy any other car. But we provide premium products. And that was the sense I got. We're a bank, we provide products for a certain type of market. They happen to be 5% of the market, but that's our market, and we do very well just looking at that market. For the rest of the groups, that's not our market. So yes, they don't have our product, but that's not our problem. And I think over my career, that's what I've sought to do, to try and get more of the financial services to look at this market. And then I went back to Ghana and actually worked for a local bank. And for me, that was great because we started building a lot of solutions with Fidelity Bank. And then mobile money started growing up. So technology came into the picture. And then we saw how with the power of technology, we were able to reach a lot of people, with mobile money. So you could see that suddenly in Africa, they are all about 90% have got access to some kind of financial product because of technology, things like mobile money. And then I went off to work for the GSMA to do that. So everywhere that I've moved, for me, is the key thing, back to my purpose. How can I get people to improve people's lives, at least through finance? And now I work for Opportunity International. And there again, looking at digital innovation. Now the big thing is AI. So how do we make sure that the AI revolution and everything that it brings, we don't let people, it doesn't pass people by. So that's my big thing. So we've got to make sure that we have solutions for farmers, we have solutions for teachers, for nano entrepreneurs, all these guys. Because otherwise, we all talk about wonderful AI stuff. And then after a while, the poor are still there because nobody has given them the tool. Nobody has developed something for them. And for me, that would be a big mess. So that goes back to my purpose. So as I go, I always find ways to use the knowledge that I've learned and everything that I know to try and improve the life of others.
Thank you so much. So I'm inspired by all of you. And now we're going to take a break, but don't go away because you're going to be doing something with your mobile phones.
Can I just make an overall comment?
Sure, of course. This is past the little blue mic over. Yeah, okay.
You see, I wonder how many of you know what's happening globally. I'm sure you do. Today we are going through a global situation where there's increasing, disparity. It's not only poverty that we are talking about, we are also talking about inequality. And I think out of a global population of about 8.3 billion, I believe, Sukhinder, you could correct me, that I would say that whereas they were thinking that only 10% are, ultra poor, but I think there are other institutions which are doubting that figure. They are saying the figure, really speaking, when you put poverty and inequality together, then you are talking about a substantial percentage globally.
Much
And
more
therefore,
than the 10% they're saying.
Much more needs to be done. Much more needs to be done. Just not financial inclusion, but other aspects of life too, whether it's health, education, whatever. Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sadhru. Yes. Okay, so thank you so much to our panel. And now, whoops, Muhammad Yunus and Desmond Tutu took a little tumble. Oops. This is the time when Muhammad Yunus was at our Financial Inclusion Forum event in 2008, and then this one with Desmond Tutu, that was at St. Martin in the Fields. But I was privileged to be with 2 Nobel Peace Prize winners in 1 year. So what we're going to do now is everyone, we want you to get next to a partner. Okay? So members of our panel, if you want, you can spread out among, but if you can get next to a partner, and maybe, maybe if you know someone, maybe you want to sit with someone you don't know. All right, so John, can you come down here? John has, right, okay. Yeah, maybe you want to move next to someone, okay. So you need to be in a pair. Okay. So Sam, you can get in a pair with somebody. Okay. All right. Okay. Are we all in a pair?
Raise your hand if you're not in a pair.
Okay. Sorry? Are you two are together? And you two? And you're two? And John needs to be with somebody. Okay, you're with Gabriel. And you two are together? So Anton, can you two become a pair? Okay, great. And Sadhru and, not Sadhru, Sequinda and Barry, and then Paul, and so we got everyone. And Sam, you could be with this, you could be a threesome here. Okay. No, but I know that, but this is the exercise that everybody's going to do. Yeah. Okay. So Marta, you could do it together with Will, okay? If you want to come out here in the front, yeah. Okay, whose head is in the way? Oh, that's, okay. Right. Rishi and Sam, somebody's head's in front of the camera.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, so listen up.
Everybody listen.
Oh, and the people at home.
All right. And this is also for the people at home. Okay, so Survinda and Barry are already doing it. Okay, so take out your phone. Everyone take out your phone. And what you're going to do with the other person in your pair, you're going to record them doing a 30-second video. And then you will swap and they will record you for a 30-second video. Okay, so here's the script of what you're going to do in your 30-second video. Okay, we have Aurora and Barry doing another video up there, but then that's typical of Financial Inclusion Forum directors. Okay, so here we go. Take your phone and record the other person. And you can say, my name is, right. Would someone like to come and do a demo with me for this? No, you can do it. You can do it. Okay. You're all clever. You know about financial inclusion and you know about how to do this, so that's good. So you can say, my name is Cecilia, and I'm a worker in AI, and I help companies to be efficient with AI, and the purpose of my life is to transform the world. And then you can say, I'm at the Financial Inclusion Forum, and I discovered that financial inclusion can help me fulfill my purpose through. And then to say to the camera, now what did you do today that was purposeful? Put that in the comments. Okay? So let's have a start. Are any questions about that? No. Okay, let's have some fun with it. Okay.
Let's go.
Will and Jude, everybody, for being such willing participants. That was great to see all
Is he
the
online?
interaction.
He's in the DRC.
And we've had a request from online if there can be questions. So we'll have some questions after this panel. And one of our panelists is Hervé, who is going to be zoomed in from the DRC. And it's a bit of old home week because Hervé was my intern for 2005, the UN Year of Microcredit. And we're going to see what he's been doing since then. All right, but let's start off with you, Sam. Now, we're talking now about the future of financial inclusion, but of course everyone is going to start by saying what their purpose is and how they got involved in financial inclusion, and then Sam's going to give us a look at the future of financial inclusion.
Right. Hello everyone. I should start by beginning that was pulled from my LinkedIn. It's a bit misleading, a little bit pretentious. So I should explain what I actually do. I suppose I am those things, but I work most of the time for EMFP in Luxembourg, European Microfinance Platform. My title is Financial Inclusion Specialist, but it covers all manner of things. I write mixed methodology surveys, I write blogs, I speak, I run 2 of the action groups on gender lens investing and on WASH, and I'm the lead author of a lot of the publications. So that's what I actually do, but there's some of the rest of my time I have bit-piece projects. And I mention that because it's a result of a path, a zigzag that took me to where I am now, but which about 20 years ago, not a bit less, but I started, this was never the plan. I went to law school and then I did a public international law LLM down the road at UCL. This was 2004-05. And my plan had been to end up in The Hague doing, as an international law barrister or something. I was quite naive because I didn't realize at the time that you don't actually just get to choose that. You actually have to start in a chambers here and then work. But I had big ideas, and a lot of faith in the international law system. And then around the time of the Iraq War and the like, that phase turned into disillusionment. And then by chance, I got a job at the CSFI running the research program there. This is a now defunct, but very important at the time, think tank, the Center for the Study of Financial Innovation. My boss was Andrew Hilton. He was formerly of the World Bank, a very difficult but brilliant man. I'm seeing nodding. A lot of people know.
Yeah, we know Andrew.
But he had a development background, and through him, I heard a lot of very strong opinions, and he gave me Easterly and Collier and Dembisa Moyo to read, and I started reading and listening about the failure of markets and this and that. And then I was feeling a lot of ennui, and I went traveling for a year to really see for myself what was going on. And when I came back, and I'd met a lot of people, I went to 35 countries, and I really did interview a lot of people for what was intended to be a book, but really ended up just being a series of blogs. And then I can't remember exactly, and I checked in with Bob and Ible, who I'd known from before, and then I ended up at a microfinance club event, and I met Dr. Phyllis SantaMaria, and we got to know each other. And then at some point later that year, she said, would you like to go to Kenya and design a training of trainers curriculum at Jamii Bora MFI in Kibera, in the biggest slum in Africa? And I didn't even know what the words in that sentence were, but it has always been my policy to say yes to things and then work out how to do them after. And that's good life lesson to the young people in the room, particularly girls, for whom I think that comes less naturally, is say yes and then work out how to do it. So I worked out how to do it, and that opportunity turned into different opportunities. I met Rosalind Copasaro, and then I was invited to author the Microfinance Banana Skins report, which was a survey of microfinance risk. And then I was invited by the EFSA group to do the same kind of survey. This is all by way of saying that I sort of zigzagged. There was no grand plan, but somehow I've made myself just about knowledgeable on just about sufficient number of different issues that I'm neither too much a generalist that I know nothing, nor too specialized that I've become pigeonholed. And that is a real luxury. And I have to remind myself that often, that I get to take on new projects. Like I was just telling Rishi, I'm doing something for the Pago Lab now, which is we are trying to design a multi-country pilot for a new model to replace Pago, which is in all kinds of difficulties. There's last mile financing for solar and the like. And how to design a new model that has an intermediary that de-risks for banks while at the same time taking the pressure off the Pagos who don't want to be doing credit in the first place because it's a disaster. So I can't remember quite how I got there, but except to say that I owe Phyllis a lot, which is why when she a couple of weeks ago said, could we have a preparatory Teams call, and then said, what's your purpose? And I said, Phyllis, I'm a middle-aged English man. I don't talk in terms of purpose. I feel uncomfortable doing so, although other Sam seemed fine with it. And he's
But
broadly
we
the
did
same
get down
demographic.
to it, Sam.
You did fine.
We did get down to it,
And
Sam.
you squeezed it out of me, and I think I negotiated and said, I won't talk about purpose. Well, I'll talk about like my objectives, my career plan. But,
said, no.
but I will just say that winding back before 20 years ago, when I was 3 and 4, we were back and forth to Australia a lot, where I grew up. And back in those days, you took proper stopovers in South Asia or whatever. And I have memories when I was 4, we stopped in then Bombay, and I remember walking down the streets with my parents in the early 80s and seeing, I think it's a real memory, but I remember seeing a dead body. But regardless, I saw staggering poverty, much more severe even than you see visibly in Indian megacities now, I think. And I remember being taught to by my parents to say, you should never, now I'm paraphrasing as an adult, but you should never be ashamed of being lucky, but you should always remember it, because you are always going to be much more, now this would be called checking one's privilege, but I think it's just, be mindful that you have it lucky, and that with being fortunate comes an obligation. I think, as Will said as well, there comes an obligation to give something back. So I've always tried to keep that in mind. So the zigzag has had a purpose in that I've always tried to do something that should have a net positive. I'll leave it there.
Yes. As they say, there's a saying from Francis Bacon, all rising to a great place is by a winding stair. And it's interesting, so many of us have these zigzag ways, but it is, we're finding a way that we can live our purpose. And so it's just to acknowledge that. And that's why I really wanted to do this event like this, because so often we don't think about why and our why, and it's so important. So Sam, can you give us, I think...
yeah, I'm not sure either of us have anything meaningful to say about the future of financial inclusion.
Well, you do.
No,
But
I don't think we
Sam-
do. I don't think we do. But I
The
will
only thing
just,
is
can I just add to what I said before to say that the now FIF and then the Microfinance Club has been hugely important, not just because I met you, but I met a lot of people over the years. I mean, I can see some of them in the room, but there are dozens more. And professional opportunities and important conversations have come out of that. And it is really important always to get together. I think the pandemic made that really clear to so many of us in its absence. Very important to find yourself around like-minded people, even if you have differences of opinion, and to discuss and argue and share.
Yes, I think that's such an important function of the Financial Inclusion Forum. But can you just say in a nutshell, because I heard the same thing from other people that I interviewed about the future of financial inclusion, and you said about the rights and wrongs, and this is something that came through, as I said, in conversations with others, is how much we want to make sure that we're developing fair products and that we are remembering to be client-centric. Yeah.
It's an enormous topic. I'm trying to write something on it at the moment which will probably not get published because it'll annoy the kind of people who it needs not to annoy. But I am fairly... there's so much positive that has happened in the last 10, 20 years. I mean, that's obvious. In my vantage point from working on the European Microfinance Award, I'm very lucky that each year I get to see the cream of innovations on a different topic each year, right? Housing or climate change or education or food security and the like. And we've had a joint event with FIF for many years now to present that. So I get to see a lot that's good, but I'm very concerned with the state of the sector overall. And I think the shuttering of US aid is going to have long-reaching effects on, as Sadhru said, I mean, we've not even scraped the surface of the downstream effects of that. And it's not just that, it's also the retrenchment in Europe, the redistribution of resources towards defense budgets and all of that. But besides, like, is there enough money for it? It's also a sense of, like, has the sector lost its way? And I think that in very important ways it has. There is a priority of access over usage, and inclusion to mean just getting people savings accounts or loans, and therefore so you can say yes, there's no 70% or 3%, when really it should be much more about agency, or autonomy, for want of a better word. Is financial inclusion is not an end in itself, it's a means, and the end you could call financial health, but whatever it is the involvement in this system meaningful in the things that matter to our lives, the ability to ensure education, to be resilient, to think long-term, all of these, to be financially healthy. And I think it's really important to think about that and get beyond a credit-centric and access-centric heuristic.
Thank you, Sam. Yeah, thank you. And so now to Rishi, who is one of our co-chairs along with Ursa. And Rishi is with the GSMA, the Global Services Microfinance Association. Is that right?
At least two of those words were right.
It's one of those acronyms I'm not quite sure about. But you're the Director for Data and Insights for Mobile Money and other important things. Right. So let's start with your purpose.
I live in the credit-centric and access-centric hell that you've just described. And I have to tell people why this is a good thing. So maybe I should just stop talking and leave, because that's basically it, really. You've summed it up quite nicely.
Start with your purpose.
Usually to make jokes, which are not very good, but I'll try and put that aside for today. We had a really good chat, Phyllis, on Saturday. And what you didn't know while we were talking was I was anxious, really anxious, because my car was trying, they were trying to fix my car and they still haven't done it.
Oh.
And I'm still anxious about that, but actually it was really nice to talk to you, because for an hour I forgot all about everything else, and actually had the chance to answer questions that I've tried to ask myself, but really haven't been able to do so. I started out wanting to be a diplomat. I'm very similar to you, Sam, in some ways. Both wanted to do good things in the international arena, both like cricket, both like football, not very good at it though, either of us. But at least, we're sitting on the same table. And for me, this is a full circle moment. About 16 years ago, I used to sit up there, listen to lectures.
You're at SOAS.
I was at SOAS,
yeah.
Or what was it, Bloomsbury Polytechnic, as you called it. 3 or 4 years later, I remember meeting Sam for the first time and asking for career advice. So it really is quite a nice full circle moment for me to be here. But really, for me, I wanted to be a diplomat, and that's the only thing I could think of, and I blame SOAS for that, lulling me into a false sense of of purpose, at least where that was concerned. Funnily enough, I did make it into the Foreign Office, much to the amusement of all of my friends, and actually envy, I should say, because they thought, you, of all people? And I tried to tell them that was because I spoke Swahili, but they probably thought I'd slept with somebody who's responsible for making a hiring decision. I didn't do that, and I can promise you that. I did, however, take a very intrusive drug test, which I will talk about at the bar if anyone wants to know. But you know, what I found when I was at the Foreign Office was I wasn't ethically dubious enough to do the things they were asking me to do. And this also felt like going off the path. Maybe there's a path and it can be squiggly or it can be a zigzag, but I felt like I'd veered so tangentially off the path that I needed something to sort of put me back into what would be more natural. And for me, I think what we discovered on Saturday are the lessons that I learned from my grandparents. So my grandparents lived in Kenya. My family's been in Kenya for 100 years, despite my accent. And I grew up there. I spent 10 blissful years living in a small town, which is famous for all the flamingos. I'm sure you're all going to Google it at some point, or you won't. But I grew up there, and I grew up in a very privileged family that didn't have to worry about so much. But what I did learn was about the fact that we also started from humble beginnings. My grandfather left India because the family's fortune had been squandered away by my great-grandfather. Someone said something about the stock market. I'm pretty sure it was petty gambling also. But nonetheless, he had to sacrifice his intentions to become a doctor and go to Kenya and start working there, and endured a lot of hardship. Maybe not poverty, but a lot of hardship. But living in Kenya and growing up there meant that I was actually surrounded by this on an everyday basis. You didn't have to go far. You could just turn a corner. It's a bit like living in Chelsea. You've got fantastic mansions, turn a corner and you're in a council estate. And it was very similar, actually, except that it wasn't a council estate. It was slums or orphanages. And I used to pay many visits to the local orphanage to donate food or drinks or flour or whatever it was that my grandma decided she wanted to give that week. And this was a regular thing. So from a young age, much like Will, where are you, Will? There you are. I was exposed to charity, and that lesson, you don't have to be told. You act and you live it out, and it becomes ingrained, part of your psyche, that this is the right thing to do. Because it felt right at the same time as well. So that was part of the experience I had growing up there. And I think the other thing that cemented it for me was that anybody who turned up at my grandma's house got a meal. It didn't matter who you were. You could be absolutely wealthy. You were fed until you couldn't eat, actually, I should add. You could also be the poorest person, and you'd still get a meal, and a hot meal, I should add, not cheese sandwiches. Although I'm okay to cheese, I'm partial to those. And so this sort of idea of charity begins at home was really ingrained in us from a young age. Fast forward years later, I flicked through many different choices and thought diplomacy was the way for me. It really wasn't. And somehow through a drunken conversation with my then girlfriend's father in some random bar in Beijing, I decided that I would end up in strategy consulting, which was great because actually you learn how to use Microsoft Excel, a very, very valuable skill for everyone and anyone, I should add. But we joke about it, but actually that's probably what's got me my last few jobs, including the current one. I enjoyed the work that I did as a consultant. What I hated about it was the fact that I was helping already extremely wealthy insurance companies become even richer. There's nothing wrong in trying to provide good quality financial products to people. I'm all for that. But the way in which they were doing that and the manner in which they were going about it at the strategic level made me question what the hell I was doing with my life. And so, despite working for one of the biggest consultancies, which thousands of people would love to work for, I decided to throw in the towel. And I was lucky at the time that there was an opportunity to go to the GSMA, which is the Mobile Industries Trade Association. I joke that it's a bit like FIFA for mobile phones, just not fantastically corrupt and without the fabulous salaries as well, I should add. And we do have a World Cup. It's called Mobile World Congress in Barcelona every year. The work I've done there has been really good. I've learned about mobile money, which I was exposed to from having gone to Kenya in 2008 and seeing what it meant for the IDPs who who were there because of the post-election violence.
So just say what IDP is.
Internally displaced persons, so internal
Yes.
refugees. And there was an election in 2007 in Kenya.
Yeah.
Inter-ethnic violence ensued. And by the way, that's not irregular. That used to happen every 5 years. We just lock ourselves in the house and hope that no one shot us. And so I was exposed to this thing, and it was really quite cool. I thought mobile phones being used to send money without apps, brilliant. I got involved in working on one of the biggest assets that the GSMA owns, which is the State of the Industry Report on Mobile Money. It was great. Spending time with data means you actually get to know things without having to be on the ground. It's not as good as being on the ground, I can tell you that much. But that really lit a fire within me. And the point at which I knew I was doing the right thing was when I went to Timor-Leste for my honeymoon. Bizarre place to go for honeymoon, but honestly, snorkeling there is like finding Nemo. It is beautiful. You don't go out on organized tours, you hire a fisherman to take you out, and the ocean is yours, or the sea is yours. There, I saw the kind of poverty that I hadn't even seen in India. You're absolutely right, Sam. It can be treacherous, and I used to go to India regularly in the 90s because my mum had grown up in India. But what I saw in Timor-Leste was more harrowing, to the point that my wife was questioning whether she made the right decision marrying me and me bringing her there, and the wisdom around that. But for me, it really was when the penny dropped, and I thought, this is really where I need to be and what I should be doing. And coming home back to the UK, that really galvanized whatever I've wanted to do. I came across FIF because people within the GSMA working in financial inclusion were aware of it and encouraged me to go. And I went for one of the breakfast meets at Reed Smith, which was co-hosted by you, Sam, and Blaine and Eugene.
Yeah.
And Blaine Stevens, who was there, and it was great. I mean, I enjoyed the free croissants, who doesn't? But really, you know, they were talking in a language that I could understand and relate to. And I made a mental note to follow FIF, and I did come to a couple of events where people from Better Than Cash Alliance spoke. That was Marjolaine Chantreau. Graham Wright from MicroSafe spoke as well. Right. I fundamentally disagree with him on a few things, but that's okay. And that's the beauty of the forum. You don't have to agree on things. And you can still be friends afterwards. Just don't throw beer at each other. And a mental note for me was to make sure that I follow FIF and continue to try and be involved as much as I can. There was an opportunity to join the board. Somehow I managed to convince Paul that I was the right person. He let me in. And, you know, we're trying to, as far as Åsa and I are concerned, we're trying to continue the good work that has been laid on by people way more illustrious than us. People have done way more in this sector than us. The least we can do from a dutiful point of view is to try and at least keep the fire burning as we face challenges, not only globally, but also within the space that we, you know, call our own, so financial inclusion. And you know what, Sam, you're right. It is looking quite tough. It's looking quite challenging. Even from a mobile money point of view, it was heralded as the next biggest thing. And I follow news on mobile money quite intently because I want to understand what people think. It's all very nice for me to say, hey, there are 2 billion accounts out there and 500 million of them are active on a monthly basis. That's great, but I don't drink my own Kool-Aid. I prefer to see what other people think. And I think a comment that I read, maybe was it today or yesterday, that really struck me was someone had written, are we still talking about M-Pesa? And I thought, you know what, yeah, that's a fair comment. Why are we still talking about M-Pesa?
Which was started in 2007 in Kenya.
Yes,
yeah.
That's right. Mm-hmm. It's great that payments are there, they're accessible. But, you know, I spent some time in Thailand and Cambodia to learn about financial inclusion there, and it's on a completely different scale. You have a scenario where there is a richer experience for someone who's finally able to access an account. The things you can do are things that people in parts of sub-Saharan Africa are still unable to do. And the problem of access is a real one. Yes, giving them access is fine, but actually, are you giving them the right kind of access? The answer is no. Are they getting utility out of it? The answer is absolutely not. They're not. And for me, I agree with the idea that Sam mentioned, that it should be about financial health. You should be able to buy an insurance product that works for you, not the one that's available in the market just because it's there. Thankfully, the fact that I keep one foot within the microinsurance sector means that there is a lot of, what can I say? There's a lot of awakening about the fact that we need better products designed for people for their actual needs. And the good thing, I think, is that in some countries, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, but also in East Asia, while maybe big donors are withering away from the scene, you are seeing more and more central banks, for example, governments, some governments, not all, take charge or want to take charge of the financial inclusion agenda. Well, your country, Ghana, is particularly impressive because it has a national financial inclusion strategy. Kenya, equally impressive because of that. I'm not talking about mobile money. I'm talking about all the other things. Are you improving people's ability to be to have a social safety net, not just the one the government provides? Are you able to improve their ability to develop and adhere to a savings culture? That's improving slowly, but the fact of the matter is that other people are taking control. In the Philippines, they think they've achieved financial inclusion. They're like, yep, this is done. But it's not the end of the road for them. What they want now is financial health. And the fact of the matter is that it's being treated as a serious policy aim with the private sector involved in some countries, not all. And for me, at least, that gives me what you were talking about, Will, that there is a little bit of hope that some people, at least out there, are trying, even if, let's say, it's not working everywhere else. So I look at that and I feel like there are pockets of hope and success where you will see financial inclusion still at the heart of the agenda. Anytime anyone talks about digital, if they're not talking about money or finance at the same time, they're absolutely wasting their time, and yours as well if you're listening to them. The reality is that the more people take control at that kind of level, at the local level, the more likely we are going to see results that will be beneficial to those who need it the most.
Thank you so much, Rishi, because, and I'm going to give you a little prompt to advertise about our parametric insurance event, because this is another really important development. And what you have just said is a wonderful segue to Hervé, who is waiting patiently online from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And Hervé is coming on board because he's going to give us an example of how local bank is actually developing a private-public partnership, right? Which is the development that we want for this financial health. And this is a combination with vocational and business education. So can we get Hervé online? But first of all, thank you so much, Rishi.
Thanks. Thank you. And yes, our next event is on the 17th of June. Please come, there'll be lots of alcohol. And we'll talk about parametric insurance.
Right.
And if you don't drink alcohol, there's plenty of soft drinks and bubbles.
Right. But the key thing about parametric insurance is that it's a way of making insurance available to farmers, for example, who can then use mobile intelligence, and as well as other ways that we can have measurements from satellites so that they can trigger, for example, payments when there's a drought or others. That's just a very simple synopsis. But it's a way of making insurance to people who are the most vulnerable. Yeah.
It'll be good.
Yes. Yes. So can we get Hervé online?
It should be there, yeah. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Phyllis.
Good evening. Can we see him? Can we see his face? It's coming. Okay. Yay, Hervé. Thank you for waiting for us so patiently.
Thank you very much. I won't be able to keep my camera because of the bandwidth.
Okay.
Allow me, so.
Okay, but we've got a chance to see you, and thank you so much for joining us from Kinshasa. And this is a reminder, the DRC is such a vast country. It takes 3 hours to fly across it. And so Hervé is in Kinshasa. And so Hervé, start off with telling us about your purpose.
Thank you very much, Phyllis. I'm deeply honored to be here with you today. Actually, my journey into financial inclusion started 20 years ago with a microfinance course at the University of Greenwich in London, and came to life during an internship with Phyllis at Planet Finance, who provided me with excellent mentorship and coaching. Phyllis, I will be forever grateful to the support that you provided and to the team as well. So basically that experience opened my eyes. I learned the value of a bottom-up client-centered approach, not just theories from the top, but listening to real people, designing solutions that fit their context and walking the journey with them. Then after that, I did some teacher training to deepen my pedagogical skills. And the motto at the time was every child matters. So still moving on with my inclusion journey. I moved to DRC in 2011. And over the past 14 years, I've been able to apply that philosophy with the support of committed teams, helped build a corporate academy in the DRC that has trained over 3,000 business client advisors, 500 middle managers, and 50 senior executives. So this investment in people helped Equity Bank in the DRC to grow our customer base from 200,000 clients to over 2 million clients and expand our branch network from 20 to 80 branches all over the country. The core of our success has been practical, personalized training and unshakable commitment to putting the client at the center. Today, I serve as the head of education at Equity Group Foundation in the DRC, which is the social arm of Equity Group, where we champion public-private partnerships to support Africa's recovery and long-term resilience. We work with the government, the private sector, and donors, not in silos, but together through co-creating projects to help communities move from dependency to financial independence. So coming back to my purpose, I see myself today, after all this inclusion journey, as a champion for empowering the social and economic transformation of the people of Africa. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity that Phyllis gave me 20 years ago to join the financial inclusion scene. Over to you, Phyllis.
Well, but Hervé, could you just describe briefly the exciting project that you're doing as a pilot with Equity and with the public partnership? Because
Yes.
I was very touched by the opportunity that you're giving, especially to girls in some of the most conflict zones. I think it's really hard for people to imagine what it is for people who don't have the opportunities that we do.
Sure, Phyllis. So, Equity Group Foundation being the social arm of the bank, what we have is it's a holistic approach with various pillars of intervention. I'll give you just an example of Julie, who is a 17-year-old girl from Kasai in central DRC. Julie was actually at risk of child marriage and exposed to conflicts after dropping out of school due to financial hardship. But her life is about to change because she's been selected out of 500 applicants for vocational training starting in July in photovoltaic electricity through one of our educational programs. So through this initiative, Julie will receive a personalized banking card with separate provisions for tuition and personal needs. She will also receive digitized technical training in solar technology, financial literacy education. She will receive a professional internship with a leader in the energy sector and access to an incubation program in business training. After this, Julie will have the opportunity to join 4 other young women to launch their own solar kit maintenance and distribution business, supported by a blend of grants and microloans from Equity BCDC, which is the commercial arm of the group. Also, their families will not be left behind because they will receive financial literacy coaching, agricultural training, and assistance in opening bank accounts to build long-term household resilience. So this holistic financial inclusion, where every link in the value chain is considered and bankerized, and everyone from students to parents to teachers to distributors becomes a participant in economic development. We believe that financial inclusion lies into robust public-private partnerships, also client-centric and digitized training, and also digital tools like my colleagues just said, like mobile banking and smart cards. Thank you.
Wow, Hervé, that is such an impressive project. And when you think about the possibility for transforming the lives of Judy and her family, and also what you told me is that the teachers in the school, the vocational school, they're also getting assistance, they're getting capacity building as well in financial inclusion, as well as other ways that they can have better resources at their vocational center. So this is echoing what so many people have told me when I was interviewing about the desperate need that there is to develop this holistic approach for financial health, and also to, as Ursa said, you have to work with so many different stakeholders. And as also what Sadru was saying, that the work that you did in East Tajikistan and the other countries, it was building those pillars of civil society, and not simply looking at what is the financial inclusion, but looking at a holistic approach. So Hervé, it's so wonderful to hear from you, and I'm just so thrilled about the excellent work, this project that you're doing in the DRC, which, as many of you know, is one of the least developed countries, and there are conflict areas. But it shows that there's green grass coming up, that there's these signs of hope and ways that we can develop in a holistic way. Yes. So thank you so much, Hervé. So now we've had a request for questions to the panel, but we have, of course, gone over our time. So I just have a request to the people in the audience. Is it okay if we take some questions?
We can take questions at the pub.
Okay, but I was just thinking about the people online.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yes, for the people online.
There was a request to ask, but there hasn't been a question forthcoming.
Okay, so there hasn't been a question forthcoming. But what I would like to say for the people online is, by all means, send us your questions, and we will make sure that we have answers coming for you. And also the other thing is, everyone here was posting on their social media, but we would like to ask you to make a posting that has hashtag FIF 20 years, and we at the Financial Inclusion Forum will follow you, not just for you to follow us, but that we will follow you. And now we have an opportunity for you to join the Financial Inclusion Forum, and this is a way that you can do this by just putting your QR code on there, and we will include you for invitations for our events that are coming up. And I think, so if you could do that, please. And then I'd like to, if everybody can do that, so that you make sure that you get included on our mailing list, and also that you can join. And now I think Ursa would like to say something.
Yes. Thank you very much for the...
Yes, thank you. Here we go. Whoops.
To say.
Whoops.
So,
We give you this one.
Perfect.
Okay. And I can-
Wow.
Here we go.
You got one yourself. Yes. So, as you, lots of you know, FIF doesn't have a lot of staff. So we are working board. We have other jobs when we are not board of directors, but we do all the work ourselves. But this year, we have been really fortunate to also have 2 interns that SOAS advertised for. So fortunately, Johnny is not well, so he couldn't be here, but we've got one for him as well. But we really want to thank you for all the work that you've done. This is so important. You can hear everyone here. And you can really see the impact of the work that you've done. So Marta is, for example, responsible for the newsletter, and we have got so many new followers around the world. So thank you very much. That's just one of many things. We thought hard and long, what kind of presents should we give you guys? And the questions that you've had for us, or the wishes, has always been, can we participate with the board? Can we learn more from you guys? You have just graduated from SOAS, the same as Johnny. So what we've done is that the present in here is a session of careers coaching for you, so that you can get off into whatever you want to do. If you don't feel like you need it, you can give it to someone else. But that's the session for you. Thank you so much. Great. And now I'll hand over to you.
Career coaching to become the next chair of FIF, right?
Yes, exactly. That's how it starts. We have to keep this one for Johnny. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I think, so the newsletter, so I think it's a really underrated thing about FIF, and I think, Suzanne, you summed it up quite nicely when you said that your colleagues at the World Food Programme absolutely love it, right? Do they what?
They're wondering. I've got these connections, and it's appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you an idea of how important it is to me, I monitor news on mobile money, financial inclusion, and payments banks. I get alerts every day. I've been getting alerts on that for the last God knows how many years, because a former manager of mine said, this is how you'll learn. Read. What did they know? But, you know, in the State of the Industry report, we have a table every year, which is mobile money highlights. And some of the things that you've put into that newsletter make it into a grand tracker. And sometimes it's stuff that I've either picked up or I've missed, or actually I would have picked up, but I saw your newsletter first. And so, just to give you an idea of how much you contribute, yes, it educates us, people like me, Suzanne, others, your colleagues, but it goes into a major publication as well. So it's a really important thing that you do. So if you want to put that on your CV, I have no problem. Yeah. Do you want to start, or shall I? Okay. I've been talking a lot. No. I'm actually tired of the sound of my own voice. All right, okay. So, as you all know, we're here because we're celebrating a birthday, I think. FIF turns 20. And, you know, for an organisation like this, it's an opportune moment to look back at what has been behind longevity. Most organisations are the function of the effort of an individual or a group of individuals. And in our case, it's Phyllis, one of FIF's founding members. You've been with the board ever since the forum started out as the UK Microfinance Club in 2005, right? I just want to get the facts right.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really no mean feat, because other directors have come and gone, but you've remained the rock for FIF over time. And as we celebrate FIF's achievements, as directors, both past and present, some of whom are thankfully here, we just want to take a moment over the next few minutes to appreciate the contribution that you've made both to FIF and financial inclusion. This is going to be awkward because I have to pass this to you every time.
Okay, so we have a little script here. Over the last few weeks, a few of us have had the chance to speak to Phyllis. I spoke to you yesterday. We talked a lot about purpose. We spoke about the respective purposes in life, what motivates us to do what we want to do, and why are we involved in financial inclusion, often above pure financial gain. Through this, as some of us have been able to articulate what drives us in our work, it has also become apparent how Phyllis' life experience have shaped her, and in some ways shaped the forum's, in many ways, have shaped the forum's activities over the last 2 decades.
It's like playing tag. So the thing I learned, you know, aside from my purpose in life, was that, you know, Phyllis, you come from a big family. You've got several brothers and sisters, some of whom, 10, gosh, there you go. Some of whom you saw not so long ago when you went to the US. And you grew up in the segregated South of the US, and as a result, you experienced an environment where exclusion was generally the norm. You explained when we spoke that what had shaped one of your early experiences, your formation, was the fact that there was an African-American gentleman who would bring food to your house from the grocery store. And, you know, you explained quite vividly that he was a good person. And when you asked him, why do you do this? Why do you bring food to our house? And he jokingly may have said, it's because your father has many mouths to feed. But the jokes, aside from that, are because of something else. I'm going to pass it back to Åsa to talk about this.
Yes, and the kindness of this man was not lost on Phyllis. What happened next would impact Phyllis for years to come. For no apparent reason, the man was brutally murdered by white supremacists. To add insult to injury, no one was arrested for this crime. We are all affected by the experiences we go through and live our everyday. This incident is one that prompted Phyllis to pursue inclusion as part of her purpose.
And as much of an awful experience this was for you, Phyllis, we know that it has formed the way you think about financial inclusion, because for the last 20 years, you've consistently led and supported FIF's core mission, its purpose, to serve as a platform where anyone who's interested in financial inclusion or working in financial inclusion or wants to work in financial inclusion could come and exchange knowledge and talk about best practices or questions that they might have. Now, as colleagues, we're very grateful to you for all the effort and energy that you've put in over the last 2 decades. You've championed various ideas, you've made sure that new directors feel welcome, and you've never lost sight of what FIF's purpose should be. One day, I promise you, I will use Monday.com. Might not be today, but I will never forget Monday.com.
You're stealing my line now. No. Yes, so many of us.
You had to get that in.
So many of us, more than those here today, have worked with Phyllis, even fought with her at times about Monday.com, for example. Phyllis has very strong opinions, but she cares so much. It's so valuable. But that has only revealed how special FIF is to Phyllis and how much FIF has been influenced by her. As Phyllis now, this is a big step, transitions from the board of directors to director emeritus, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of everyone at FIF today and everyone that has worked with FIF ever, we'd like to say, Phyllis, thank you so much for everything you've done. We won't forget you, and you will always be part of FIF. And now you have an even more important next step to take in your Innoviva Tech with financial inclusion. Please come up here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And since you're all part of the family, we have a little bit of a request if everyone could come down here so we could have a picture with Phyllis in the middle.
Yeah.
That's called inclusion, right?